Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today, we welcome Gita Balakumar. She's a pediatrician, and today's Kevin MD article is What Physicians and Dragonflies Share in Resilience and Agility. Gita, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start by briefly sharing your story and talk about why you decided to write this article on Kevin MD.
Yeah, so I'm a board certified pediatrician of 20 years, and I've worked like in a variety of communities and medical settings, like outpatient care, military base, pediatric urgent care. I even like participated in like California Medical Corps. So I still currently work in direct patient care as a locums, and now I'm involved in physician career development coaching. And I wanted to write an article to kind of share my journey through my certification as a career development coach.
How did you decide to make that transition from pediatrics to a development coach?
Yeah, I ended up having, well, I'll call a sabbatical in my career. So I knew that there was a program to get certified to help coach physicians, but I didn't quite understand what it was actually. So after I went through the program, I wanted to find a metaphor in nature that connected and resonated with my personal journey. And this kind of led to I like dragonflies. I had just admired them from afar. So I found this profound link between these unique creatures in the medical profession, which ultimately gave me the foundation of my coaching practice. And what I found was this shared bond of like longevity and cultural reverence and historical significance. And this was also found in many cultures, like the Navajo, Chinese, Japanese samurai. For centuries, these cultures have honored the dragonfly as a symbol of transformation and resilience. And I think that really speaks to, our profession.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. The Navajo, like they considered sacred symbols of life. They actually feel that dragonflies are a conduit between the living world and the spirit world. And they have a specific, there's like a little bit of a folklore story of the dragon being tricked into a dragonfly.
Mhm.
And although tricked, that new dragonfly was okay to adapt and accept. In Chinese culture, it's a symbol of renewal and harmony and flexibility, and this is the heart of medicine. And my favorite was the Japanese samurai. I don't know if you've ever seen samurai armor, but they use the image of a dragonfly on there, and they revere it to the point that they call it a victorious insect, and because they're relentless and
Mhm.
they're forward flying. So these are attributes that I think people in healthcare and physicians have. They're very much having to adapt and accept. And there's also hopeful things like renewal and harmony. And what I found with all of these cultures that resonated was the same truth, the symbol of transformation.
So
So,
let's talk more about that metaphor. In your article, you talk about the dragonfly's metamorphosis from nymph to flyer, and you equate that or you compare that to medical training. So tell us about how those two compare.
yeah, so the dragonfly, you know, has an unusual life cycle. It starts as an aquatic nymph, like in the water, and it's like deep in the water before it becomes this beautiful creature of air. And I feel that that's just not a transition, that's like a transformation.
Mhm.
So when you decide to become a physician or whatever avenue, you are going from, whether you decide in high school, but you get to college, and then you have to like adapt and change into a medical student, and then you have to, continue through residency. And then however your career pans out, I think it shows how flexible and adaptable we have to be to move forward. And there's all these transformative stages, just like the dragonfly has had to going from a water life, coming from the depths of that to being a flying insect. So, without getting into all the little, nuts and bolts of like the life cycle of a dragonfly, this was very inspiring because this transformation is going in on all of us. And for me, that was my personal journey. I think many of us didn't think that we were going to have side gigs or lateral moves or leave medicine like so early or earlier than we thought we would. But in truth, for all that medicine requires us to be, many are maybe going through another transformation. Like I want to stay away from the word transition because I think transformation is has a little bit more depth to it. And as humans, we all evolved. And I know the word burnout is out there.
Hmm.
And when healthcare professionals use the word burnout, I think it's to the truest definition. But when it's used within the healthcare organizations and within the system, there seems to carry a negative implication that like the doctor couldn't hack it,
Hmm.
or in the business of medicine kind of has co-opted the word to place the blame a little bit on the individual. And the issue is not a personal failure of resistance, but rather this immense burden and systemic impact that has been placed upon physicians by the healthcare system. And how it connects back to that dragonfly is like we have been, flying forward and relentless. And the dragonfly has predated dinosaurs. So when you're 20 years into your, career, you kind of feel like I've been at this for a minute, and I'm trying to, adapt and renew and transform. But, you know, it, it, we're also humans that evolve, but it can take a toll. So that's kind of how I wanted to bring my coaching platform and the education of coaching to healthcare professionals and clinicians, because maybe they're not aware of it or they're not fully understanding what it provides. So I wanted to connect them back
Hmm.
to something that I found personal and relevant.
Yeah, that framing that physicians aren't resilient enough is such a fallacy because, as we both know, just to make it through medical school, internship, residency, and then in some cases practicing for decades, it takes the most resilient people to go through that journey. So I love the reframing that you're bringing with this metaphor. In the beginning of your piece, you open with an image of a helicopter hovering with a missing blade. What was the feeling you were trying to capture with that image to introduce your piece?
I think when we, come into medicine, we finish residency, we feel like, we have, the skills and the capability, but we just need a little bit more practice, hence the practice of medicine. But after, you know, your career going on for so long and there's so many ups and downs in the system, you know, we are hovering and we're always moving from one thing to another. And a dragonfly has four independent wings to fly.
Hmm.
One can break off and it could keep still flying. So I feel like we have come to that point with physicians where we keep going, we keep going. And where is, do we have to lose all four blades before we say enough is enough?
Hmm.
So I really wanted to kind of use that metaphor to say that, you know, this can't keep going on. We can still function independently, but I don't think it's healthy.
So we've talked about this metaphor, and I love this connection. This is actually the first time I've heard so much about dragonflies and the history of dragonflies, and you equating this to what physicians are going through. Tell us how you incorporate this imagery, these metaphors, as part of your coaching business whenever you talk to clinicians.
Yeah. So, we have right brain and left brain, and some people connect with an image or a metaphor. Some people are more logical. So it just depends on the individual as far as like if there's an interest in coaching, like how they may feel that they're this resilient, person. But if I set it up in a dragonfly metaphor, they can see that connection and they can see that this little insect has like continued to exist for eons. And if they connect to it, great. But I can also do the logical part too, where it's like, hey, this is coaching, this is how we're just going to unlock what's inside, what's your skill level, your mastery to address and strategize for any career challenges that you have.
In your article, you talk about self-compassion and how that is a foundation and not a luxury. Do you find that some of the clinicians that you talk to find self-compassion and that concept difficult to accept?
Yeah, I think I think there's a couple of things going on. I think we feel that we have to put our patients first,
Mhm.
but we have to be healthy as well to take care of others. And if they're lacking some self-compassion, yeah, that's one of the things I want them to get back to, because if we don't give it to ourselves, then who will? Because the system is hard on us, but it's also unfair. And so if we're not giving it to ourselves and to our fellow colleagues, that grace and that compassion, it's we have to at least like congregate amongst ourselves to provide that foundation.
So tell us the success story. As you said earlier, there are a lot of physicians who are burnt out. And of course, I talk about that a lot on this podcast and on my site. Give us an example where maybe you made a little bit of that transformation in that physician and what that looked like.
Mm, So there was a client who was a physician, and they were recently understaffed, and they were putting the non-physician, non-doctoring work on her
Hmm.
until they filled the void. But it wasn't her responsibility. And she, she felt responsible to do it because she needs the office to be open and do all these other like logistical things. But it's not what she's hired to do. It's not that she's incapable of doing it or that it's beneath her. So like as we're going through, the session, because of the type of coaching model that is, that I learned was, you're trying to bring forth, what their values are. And at towards the end, we had this breakthrough where she realized this takes away time from my family.
Hmm.
This takes away time from the things I need to do in my life to get up an hour earlier and do the things that aren't required of her skill set. So she did have this breakthrough and, like got visibly sad, because she's trying to manage two great responsibilities, which is this work she does as a physician and then her family. And I think she, got to a point to realize like, I need to speak up and say something.
Mm. Now, the next time a weary clinician sees a dragonfly hovering nearby, what would you like them to think about it as they see that dragonfly?
When we see dragonflies in nature, they seem to be solo, and all the connection that we have with dragonflies and this beautiful and historical in the environment and nature that they are, whatever our role in healthcare is, we are not a silo. We are not alone. And there is this model in coaching for physicians and healthcare professionals that can assist and take that edge off. And we don't have to feel shame or failure because we are ordinary humans doing an extraordinary thing, just as a dragonfly is so extraordinary in nature. And so we're allowed to seek out ways to feel empowered, supported, transformed. And, I really want them to know that, they're not alone.
We're talking to Gita Balakumar. She's a pediatrician and physician development coach. Today's Kevin MD article is What Physicians and Dragonflies Share in Resilience and Agility. Gita, let's end with your take home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience.
I think by giving ourselves permission to be who we truly are, we have our own boundaries, emotions, and needs. We don't diminish our professionalism, we strengthen it. And we have to accept how other people function. And this professionalism, this new way, can spill over into the culture that we want to be in and where we can lead.
Gita, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and insight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.